Hello, Krista DeMarco, or Renee Barker. I own Psychic Soul Senses. I'm from Lawrence County, Ohio, Ironton. Delete Laws has been in here. I did my interview with him at McDonald's, talking about Spaljeric and him trying to almost killing me. It wasn't that he was stalking, but I went to jail for domestic, and I was wounded. I had to have 7 staples in my head, and he was booking me in, and I blew the hair where they had shaved it. It fell down on my face, and I blew it out, and he thought I was spitting on him, so he choked me. The corruption in this town has been going on for years and years, decades, and I want to help change. I want to help bring change. So there's something I want to talk about, which is the war on drugs, the war on us. It's the war on us is what it is. And through the war on drugs, every time a poor community has a lot of overdoses, a lot of drug activity arrests, things like that, they get funds and grants. But it doesn't seem to help us. What it does is it helps them fight against us to get us charges and to get us felonies, which then gets us rehab. But once we're rehabilitated, we are criminalized, and we are not able to get the right housing, the right jobs, etc. So this was mentioned in one of Chile's videos, the Portuguese, or the decriminalization in Portugal, learning from a health and humane-centered approach. Now, what they have been able to do is, because certain laws allow them to, like, if you have a drug arrest, say it's even just paraphernalia, they can put that in as drug abuse, and then you're labeled an addict, and they get all this funding for you while you get to pay court costs and go through charges and lose your kid and do all this other stuff. And they're in your medical business. And what allows them to do that is the law that says they're helping you, but they're not. So I'm going to read this to you. It's really interesting. It talks about our draconian laws. I swear. We are so indoctrinated, and we don't even realize it. Guys, we can do better. We can do better, and it starts here, and we've got to do better. We've got to change. We've got to do something different now. Like now. For our kids. For our grandkids and our great-grandchildren. They've got to live in this mess when we're gone. So, it says, Portugal has received global attention for its groundbreaking and comprehensive drug decriminalization program launched in 2001. In response to public health crisis in 1999, Portugal had the highest rate of drug-related AIDS in the European Union and the second highest prevalence of HIV among people who inject drugs, and drug overdose deaths were rapidly increasing. Since Portugal ceased criminalizing drug use, the results have been dramatic. The number of people voluntarily entering treatment has increased significantly. While overdoses, HIV infections, problematic drug use, and incarceration for drug-related offenses have plummeted. Drug decriminalization is defined as the elimination of criminal penalties for drug use and possession of drugs for personal use, as well as the elimination of criminal penalties for the possessions of equipment used for the purpose of introducing drugs into the human body, such as syringes. While several other countries have had successful experiences with the decriminalization, including the Czech Republic, Spain, and the Netherlands, Portugal provides the most comprehensive and well-documented example. The success of Portugal's policy has opened the door for other countries to rethink and practice the practice of criminalizing people who use drugs. Canada, France, Georgia, Guyana, Ireland, Norway are all currently discussing ways to end decriminalization of personal drug use. In March 2018, the Drug Policy Alliance led to delegation of 70 U.S. advocates to Portugal to learn from its health and human-centered approach to drug use. This diverse group included many individuals and groups representing those hit hardest by the drug war. It's a war. From those who have been incarcerated for drug offenses to those who have lost loved ones to an overdose. They live in communities across the U.S., including New Orleans, Mississippi, Durham, North Carolina, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, and represent more than 35 advocacy and community organizations working on radical justice, criminal justice reform, and harm reduction. That's what we are in the middle of, is criminal justice reform. That will break down these shady, corrupt systems, and that's what we need to do. And we need to look at this differently. It needs to be looked at differently as a health issue instead of a criminal issue, because the stigmatism is bad the other way. We're not drug addicts are not bad people. I'm ashamed of our community for looking down on drug addicts. I am. I've been the trolls that come in and talk about how bad we are. We broke the laws. Come. It's deeper than you guys think. It's deeper. In the United States, the dominant approach to drug use is criminalization and harsh enforcement, with 1.4 million arrests per year for drug possession for personal use. Disproportionately, those arrested are people of color. Black people are 3 times likely as white people to be arrested for drug possession for personal use. The impact of these arrests and convictions goes well beyond possible incarceration. The ripple effect throughout families and communities is devastating, given how intensely criminalization targets black and brown people in the U.S. It amounts to a form of systematic oppression. Meanwhile, criminalization means few resources have been devoted to providing treatment, access to health services, and support to those who need it. For low-income people of color, such services and support are often non-existent. Advocates also observed a dissuasion commission session where people who are found possessing small amounts of drugs are referred. The DPA delegation set out to learn how Portugal achieved a dramatic drop in HIV infections related to syringe sharing in overdose facilities, as well as impact of decriminalization on criminal justice system. What I've seen here is that Portugal's drug policy encourages humanism and pragmatism with a focus on the individual. I think that's what the issue should be. It should be on the person, not the drug. People make mistakes, man. People do stuff. Our parents did drugs, and they got over their drug issues, right? You know, they partied, they tried things out, and look, they're fine. We never got the chance to do that because they stiffened all the laws. So you get pulled over, and it's, hey, everybody give your ID. Oh, you got a joint? Everybody's charged with drugs. That is, it's outrageous. The move to decriminalize. In the 1990s, Portugal faced one of the highest prevalence rates of overdose deaths, problematic drug use in Europe, with people who injected heroin comprising 60% of the HIV positive population in the country. The Portuguese public ranked the drug related issue as a main social problem in 1997, prompted by fears of rising drug use and the prevalence of open and visible use in public spaces. In response, the government appointed a committee of experts, including doctors, lawyers, psychologists, and social activists, to study the problem and make the recommendations for a national response. The committee recommended ending the criminalization of people who use drugs regardless of what drug they are using. Additionally, they recommended having an honest discussion on prevention and education, providing access to evidence-based voluntary treatment programs, adapting harm reduction practices, and investing in the social reintegration of people with drug dependence. See, when you get labeled a bad person and a low-life piece of shit because you got charged with a joint or you got charged with a little bit of meth or something, and you want to fix your life, you want to move on, you want to get past addiction. But even if you do, once you're charged, you're still labeled. So what does that do mentally to a person? It creates a split. And they look down on themselves and feel bad about themselves. Not only that, there's a stigma on them. And everywhere they go, people look down on them because that's what we were taught to do. They're criminals. They are not criminals. The recommendations were accompanied by a new philosophy concerning drugs and drug use based on the following assumptions. Drug and drug use are not inherently evil, and a drug-free society is unattainable. People use drugs for a number of reasons, and punitive policies are unethical and ineffectual. I love this part. What stuck with me the most is their approach to solving the problem instead of compounding it. The humane, logical approach to helping its citizens. Being there, seeing it, and understanding it. And then looking at what we can do in the U.S. made me think that our approach and policies are barbaric. I said that at the meeting once here, and once everyone's heads turned like I had said a cuss word. The response to drug use here is more harmful than the drug itself. Come on, U.S., we can do better. That's Susan Burton from the Executive Director of New Way of Life, and she's right. It is absurd. It is barbaric, and we can do better. The Portuguese national government adopted the majority of the committee's recommendations passed in accompanying the law in 2000 and began to set up commissions for discussions of drug abuse under the Ministry of Health. A totally different department gets called if someone is caught with drugs on them. It's no longer a police issue. That's how it should be. If drug addiction is labeled a disease and you go to rehab and your medical card can pay for it or your insurance can pay for it or you can pay for it, it's a medical issue, not a police issue. And them punishing you and treating you like a barbarian is not helping. It worsens the situation. You create another trauma on an active addicted user that's already traumatized. That does no good. It makes it harder to get out of the addiction. Okay, so I'm not going to go through what all their laws that they adopted and stuff, but I am going to look at Okay, so it says harm reduction is a set of ideas and interventions that seek to reduce the harms associated with both drug use and ineffective drug policies. It's based on acknowledging the dignity and humanity of people who use drugs and bringing them into the community of care in order to minimize negative consequences and promote optimal health and social inclusion. This could include ending discrimination against drug users, reducing drug overdoses, providing supervised consumption services for people who use drugs, and immunity from arrest for witnesses to an overdose. Now, it says the number of people entering has increased. So, Portugal went from having one of the highest rates of problematic drug use in Europe before decriminalization to having a rate of overall drug consumption that is low in comparison with that of other European countries. Aside from marijuana and new proactive substances, drug use for all drugs has fallen below 2001 levels. Overdose deaths and new cases of HIV and AIDS among the people who use drugs have both plummeted since 2001, a remarkable benefit of Portugal's discrimination model. It also says that overdose deaths by over 80% after decriminalization has happened. They decreased by 80%. In 1999, 369 drug overdoses were reported. 36.2 per million. By 2015, that number had fallen to 54. Portugal's drug-induced mortality rate was 5.8 deaths per million in 2015, which is far lower than the Europe average. Wow, so it dropped dramatically. Okay, then you got the trip confirmed there is nothing in our history or culture that inevitably dooms U.S. to repeat mistakes of its own drug policies. That was the most significant lesson that I brought home from Portugal. Fear-based rhetoric and appeals to discriminatory bias lose their power when a solution-oriented response is available to a pressing society-wide problem. Andy Coe said that. He is also a director, Partnership for Safety and Justice. So they go on to talk about that overdoses decreased by 80%. The AIDS and HIV diagnosis fell from 52% to 6%. 52% to 6%. That's good. Incarceration went down 40%. It's outrageous, man. In contrast, the criminalization of drug possession is by far the largest driver of arrests in the United States each year. The U.S. law enforcement makes approximately 1.6 million drug arrests. The overwhelming majority, more than 85%, are for possession only. In 2017, of 1.63 million drug arrests, nearly 40%, 599,282 were for marijuana, and over 40% were possession for drugs other than marijuana. Radical bias compounds the harm and suffering caused by arresting, persecuting people solely for drug possession. People of color bear the brunt of the costs of drug law enforcement, which causes irreparable harm to the individuals who are arrested, for their families and their communities. U.S. remains entrenched in a retributive stance on drug use, which is a major obstacle, although we do see some progress for the greater understanding of the need for harm reduction strategies because of the opioid overdose crisis. There is little or more room for opening minds to ending the war on drugs and the major drug policy reform. Gretchen Bergerman, co-founder of New Path, said that. So basically, I want to go ahead and close this out or end this video with this to think about. These laws, every time they stiffen drug laws for bootlickers that think they're going to be safe, or when they put that term out, this is to help make us safe, they're taking away your rights. They take away your rights. That's what this does. It takes away your rights. None of this helps. We can do better. I agree. So anyways, I just wanted to talk about this. We need change. We need big change. Hope you guys got anything or got something from this video. It's just time to make some changes. We don't stop. All right, guys. I love you all. I'll talk to you later.